It's not about teaching JavaScript or the flavor of the month. It's about creativity, curiosity, and fearlessness.
Linda Liukas is on a mission to change the way we teach and learn technology. She says we should be playing more.
We learn, especially when we are young, with our fingertips and on our hands and knees and with the tip of our tongue.
And Linda's not just saying this, she's building it. She's just designed and opened a playground where kids can run around and play and maybe learn how computers work while they do.
Kids can actually climb and have this sense of adventure, so they can go through the CPU and the RAM and the ROM of the computer. There's this huge keyboard where you can go and jump around on. There's a neon cat you can ride on.
I invited Linda on Crafted because I think right now we could all use a little more whimsy, a little more play in our lives and in the products we build. Linda also has an incredible imagination and provocative thoughts on the skills and mindset we'll need to thrive in the age of AI. We'll hear how physical play is so important for learning and why software organizations should also embrace play. Plus, I love Linda's path. Designing playgrounds was not exactly on her bingo card, nor was becoming a best-selling author, but her career took a pivot about 10 years ago when she launched a Kickstarter for a book she wanted to write called Hello Ruby, where kids could learn computer science concepts through the eyes of a mischievous girl. Fast forward to today, and Linda's 4 books are read by kids all over the world. She advises school districts on teaching tech, and she wants us all to have more fun. So let's play. It's time for recess. I'm Dan Blumberg, and this is Crafted, where we speak to the technologists crafting the future. So you call yourself the Mary Poppins of Computing, and that's really fun. How did you come upon that nickname, and what do you hope people conjure when they hear it?
Well, I think Mary has this whimsicality, this sense of something new is coming up. She's not overly nice. She's a little mischievous. And that's what technology is, honestly. It's a bag full of all kinds of gifts, and some of them are nice and some of them are not so nice. I think what I want to do, I used to say I want to be the Björk of programming, Björk of JavaScript or something like that, but I think Mary Poppins is a little bit more universal.
That's really fun. So you've just designed and built a playground in Helsinki that teaches kids programming concepts through play. Congrats on I'm sure that was a big project. It looks amazing. I hope to take my kids there someday. Tell me about the playground and why you say playgrounds are where we should teach software.
So the playground opened on 1st of October, so 0110. The playground was started during the pandemic when I just realized that playgrounds are the places where we are building future schools, in effect, or schools that are places where what we wished schools felt like. So places where kids are doing project-based learning, they are self-directed, they are conflict resolving among themselves. And we grown-ups are there, but we are not there giving them instructions or commands, or rather we are there just to support them and help them in whatever they are trying to do. And it also felt really important that as we are seeing software skills and the field of computer science becoming more equitable, more inviting to all kinds of people, public spaces felt also like a place where these ideas could be explored and taught more openly.
For those who can't see it right now, what's the playground look like? What are people doing?
So close your eyes and imagine a really worn down 90s playground with the typical castle and maybe there was swings and stuff like that. And now open your eyes and see a playground that has this gigantic stack of computing devices. And when I say gigantic, it's 5 meters, where the kids can actually climb and have this sense of adventure, so they can go through the CPU and the RAM and the ROM of the computer. There's this huge keyboard of a computer where you can go and jump around on. There's a neon cat you can ride on, a robot, a swing, all kinds of these play structures that invite kids to imagine what it would feel like to be a virus inside of a computer. And very sneakily, there's these little prompts there that help children realize and connect some of the things that they do in their everyday lives to the play structure. So you can take, for instance, the phone carousel. It's like a tall phone where you can sit in and the whole structure swings around and you can do your favorite TikTok dance there or like a victory thing. But then you can also start to really discuss about how algorithms are shaping our lives and how the kinds of content you see on YouTube or TikTok or whatnot are really defined by an algorithm. And I think it's about making memories. I don't think that anyone who visits the park really understands how an input-output machine works or like grasps the concepts behind a von Neumann architecture, but it's about building a memory. So I'm hoping that in 10 or 20 years' time, these kids, they will remember the like sensation of being in the playground and exploring programming concepts like loops and sequences and so forth. And yeah, that's the basis of the idea. We are still humans who are very much grounded in the physical environment. We learn, especially when we are young, with our fingertips and on our hands and knees and with the tip of our tongue. And even though I love all of the things that are happening in the realm of software and VR and AR, I love public spaces and physical things even more.
What is it about the physical nature of play that makes it so ideal for understanding how computers work?
I think it's about building like a grounded cognition, building a memory, and there's a lot of studies already from the 1970s and 80s around like how people actually understand math concepts, but also how people understand programming concepts. And one of the sort of big names in this realm is a person called Seymour Papert, who co-founded and designed this Logo programming language. And he went on to work at MIT and worked with Marvin Minsky and the rest of the sort of early AI adapters. But Papert was interesting because he was a trained computer scientist and he was also very well versed in early childhood education and cognitive sciences. And he tells this story about when he was a little boy, how he would look at like these cogs in a machine or these wheels that would interlock, and he would make the connection between multiplication in math and these cogs, like the tiny cog turning a little bit and the big cog turning a little bit more. And then he tells this other story about a little boy who in class was told that he couldn't use his fingers to count because that's what at some point math educators would tell, that don't use physical prompts, you need to abstractly think through problems. And then he would circle, at this time he was already a grown man, and he would circle in the classroom and he would observe the boy and he would see the boy was concentrating a lot. And then he went on and asked, like, what are you doing? And the boy whispered to him that I'm calculating by using my teeth and tongue, and I'm calculating with my tongue, my teeth, and like making the multiplications or whatever math exercise it was. And I think those two stories kind of highlight how, like, even though the concepts are abstract, even though math and computer science tend to veer on the side of like very, very intellectual, very, very abstract, there's still so much that like requires our physical effort. And with some of the new concepts of computer science, like, I don't know, like large language models or embeddings or quantum computing or whatnot, the research is not out there yet. We still need to figure it out. But I think we can take a lot of cues from math education and look at how they've used manipulables to teach very abstract concepts to kids.
Yeah, and I know you've done something similar with teaching algorithms by sorting pancakes. Is that right?
Oh, yeah. So I have a terrible memory. I have a hard time like remembering what is, I don't know, like the different sorting algorithms. And I need to actually physically touch the algorithms to remember them. So when I was practicing bubble sort algorithms or whatnot, I was making them out of Play-Doh and just like physically manipulating and remembering them. And with the pancake sorting algorithm, the name kind of gave me a cue. So I actually for those who are not aware, like pancake sorting algorithm is a sorting algorithm. And it's famous because the idea is that you make a stack of pancakes and you always flip the pancake like stack in a certain way. And for some people, like the Python or the Ruby or whatever, like code immediately reveals itself. You immediately understand that, it's this is the way it works. But I actually had to make those greasy pancakes and like flip them with my own hands and the spatula to really follow the algorithm and understand how an unorganized stack of numbers would be organized with the pancake sorting algorithm. And the beauty of doing it this way is now I feel like I own the algorithm. Like there was no way I will ever forget the basic principle of how it works. And I also got to eat the pancakes. So it was a win-win.
How can adults and how can software organizations embrace play more, and why should they?
Well, I think play is the original way we learn about things. Play allows you to make mistakes. It allows you to explore different ideas, and play is in no way random. Play always has rules, which is something that I think grown-ups tend to forget. So it's not like that kids are crazy creative. Play has a lot of like these rules built into it. And I think the beauty of play for any organization is that we can explore ideas and we can learn about making mistakes. And for instance, in today's day and age when like AI is often used for optimization, I think play allows us to just look at the world, which is, I think it's Samuel Arbesman who says always that the world is combinatorially weird and fractally interesting. I think that is like a beautiful sense of how a grown-up could approach play, that there's so many possibilities out there, and fostering this sense of play is an important part of it.
In this moment in tech, we're kind of in an efficiency era. Like I think things like play and things like they're sort of being cut. Companies actually care about being profitable for the first time in a while, which is kind of a weird thing to say, but it's true. The job market's not great. Do you think that all makes it harder to justify play? And what would you say to leaders who are trying to bring more of this, whimsy and activities? How can they make more of a case for it?
I think especially, this is again like for the young people, because I work with a lot of young people. And when I say young, I mean like people in their early 20s. And I feel for them, this is the first downturn they are seeing. And it's devastating for them. They are like, oh, like, will my coding skills be obsolete? And like, will there ever be a place for me? And again, it's about like, do we cultivate a sense of opportunity, a sense of possibility? And I've seen like, so I grew up in Helsinki, Finland, where Nokia was like, I don't mean like a huge chunk of our GDP in the early 2000s when the mobile phones were everywhere.
Yep,
and
I had one.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was in university, I dreamt of being like a middle manager at Nokia. No kidding, like that was my thing I wanted to be. And then Nokia started to go down, and people like were devastated. And then all of a sudden, like there was just this room for other things to emerge. There was a lot of software engineering talent. There was a lot of hardware engineering talent in Finland. And out of the ruins of Nokia emerged like this whole new startup ecosystem and just much more healthier economy. And that's not to downplay the role of Nokia, still an important company today and so forth. But it just was a talent vacuum. It sucked all of the energy out of a small country. And having seen that and experienced that firsthand, I believe that there's going to be another boom. I don't know if it's going to be 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, but there is the possibility that like things will be again good. And I think there's this tendency for grown-ups to either be like optimistic or pessimistic. And both of them have this certainty I think we don't have the luxury of having, because optimists are certain that everything's going to be okay. And pessimists are absolute certain that everything is going to go like bonkers. And I tend to say that I have a hopeful relationship with technology. And that's a little bit of a play with Rebecca Solnit, I think, who wrote about like a lot of hope as like a guiding philosophy in life, because a hopeful person like leaves room for uncertainty. Things might turn out well. And I think that's the spirit. If I was a manager at a company, I would try to foster in my employees. We are not certain, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, well, the one area where I think there is a ton of play, and people would actually use that word play, I think that's happening is around generative AI, because it's still this pretty new thing, and like the only way to sort of understand what it's good for is to play with it, is to figure it out. I'm curious how you're playing with it today.
Well, I'm doing like in some ways the opposite of what others are doing. So I'm doing very, very tiny data sets. So as long as I remember, like almost from the age of, like even from like age 12, I'd say, as I've collected links. I've been just like a hoarder of all kinds of like links and like information online. And I've had like Arena, I've had Pinboard, I've collected like Kindle highlights, and yeah, that's me. And then a few months ago, I realized that, oh boy, like I can feed all of this to a generative AI and ask for it to look for patterns that I might not be able to like find from all of these like snippets and ideas and logs, because there's, I don't know, thousands of pages, which for a large language model is really small, but then for a person, it kind of already collects a lot of things that I can't hold in my head at the same time. So I'm doing that. I'm sort of going into my own subconsciousness and my own ideas and notes about the world, and asking a large language model to find interesting trends and patterns and ideas that I might not remember otherwise.
I know you advise a lot of schools and on different curricula. How do some of these concepts work in schools, and how are schools able to teach computer concepts without even computers on the kids' desks?
So there's this whole movement called the unplugged computing or unplugged computer science curriculum, and it's an old movement. It far like outdates my work, so like maybe even 20 years or so. And it's this whole like library of different kinds of concepts that teach kids how to like form different networks, for instance, like how to practice binary calculations, how to like play act the different parts, the components of a computer, like the CPU, the processor or the RAM or the ROM. And like there's even this very sort of hardcore idea. I think it was Dijkstra, this very sort of famous computer scientist, a Dutch one, who said that you don't really need a computer to like do computer science, that like he far preferred doing computer science with a pen and paper. And at the time when he was like more active in the 1970s, or maybe at the time when he said these things, like computers were a thing that didn't like belong to every classroom. They were more rare and sort of more prestigious. And I'm not maybe advocating a return to those times, but I think exploring these ideas in an unplugged manner helps to understand that computer science is not a fad. It's not like the latest JavaScript library or the newest generative AI model. There are these big ideas that span for the past 80 years or so, and those ideas can be explored through a multitude of ways. So not only with like the screen and keyboard, but also with pen and paper and Play-Doh and maybe even a playground.
I mean, I guess it gets to sort of what's most important for kids, but not just kids, like, you know, lifelong learners to be learning, right? Is it a new language? Is it learning how to code, like very literally, or is it sort of how a computer works?
So my sort of professional coming of age happened at the time when like this whole idea of learn to code was really picking up steam. It was 10, 15 years ago, and there was this like big rallying cry behind like, let's have people learn more coding and let's make it more sort of democratic. And I always felt that, yeah, that's important, but already at that time, I felt like I think I started to say that, yeah, like if JavaScript or Python or Ruby truly is the new next lingua franca, instead of grammar classes, we ought to be teaching poetry lessons. And what I meant with that idea is the idea that we don't learn a language by conjugating it, by like practicing the irregular verbs. We learn a language by speaking it, by singing it, by flirting it, by running it. And in the same way, the sort of learn to code felt a little stale. And I feel like now we are facing a similar kind of big wave of curricular change with AI. And like learn AI has become a similar kind of big cry from both the industry, but then also policymakers and parents especially. And those lessons we learned maybe 10 years ago, a decade ago, when we really started to put computer science into public schools and private schools as well. But globally, like in a lot of different countries, computer science became a discipline that we started to teach to kids at an early age. We need those lessons now as we are seeing the AI future.
Yeah, I imagine the parents who are advocating for teach kids AI, they want their kids, they want themselves to be sort of future-proof or forever employable. And you speak to folks like that or school administrators and they're saying, we need to teach kids AI. How do you respond? What do you find are the key skills that will always be important, including today's flavor of the month?
Love it. I tell educators and parents that it's not about teaching JavaScript or the flavor of the month. It's about creativity, curiosity, and fearlessness. And even more so today than it was 10 years ago. Fearlessness means that if you approach AI with the idea that it's going to steal all the jobs, it's going to outperform humanity, then you're just not going to have even a chance against it. If fear is what you start with, then that's a really poor place to be in. And I think especially in childhood, a lot of the tech companies right now are run by people who grew up in the 1960s, whose sort of formative years happened around a time when, especially in the States, but also here in France and in Finland, technology was seen as a very positive force. It was man to the moon, and here it was TGV, the fast speed trains France was building and so forth. And those were the kind of formative experiences around technology people had. And I worry about today's kids if they start to have a fearful attitude towards technology. Because then we're going to see in 40 years' time, 50 years' time, a lot of companies that are based on fear. And that's a sad future. So fearlessness, creativity, well, that's kind of obvious, I think. We humans excel at our creativity. We apply computing into new disciplines, and computer science is a discipline. Again, it's 70 years old, 80 years old. So it's a new discipline. It's still looking at its boundaries. And we see very, very exciting things when you combine biology and computer science, the recent chemistry Nobel, all of these disciplines that, not that they were reaching the end of their line, but still they will be pushed far ahead with computation and computer scientists coming in. But then also arts, social sciences, liberal arts, whatnot. And then the final component, curiosity. And this is where I just feel so strongly that curiosity is our superpower as humans. Computers are not inherently curious at all. And the people who will do best with large language models and generative AI are those who are curious. And I wonder if that's a skill that we will just start to teach at school. How many different ways can you look at this problem? How many different new questions can, maybe we'll flip all of the exams in the same way as we have flipped classrooms today, that students do the reading at home and then discussions at school. Maybe exams will be the opposite way, that you get the results, but then you need to come up with the questions yourself. I think curiosity is that important when it comes to technology.
I love that. Tell us about Ruby. I imagine she embodies a bunch of these characteristics that you're talking about. She's the protagonist of your books.
Yeah. So Ruby is, I'm often asked if she's me when I was younger. I think she's a little bit more fearless and more creative and curious. I think Ruby was the first programming language I fell in love with. It was the first time I felt... so it's a programming language designed by this Japanese man called Yukihiro Matsumoto. And the first thing I learned about Ruby as a programming language was that we are nice because maths is nice. And this was the early 2010s. And there was this community of really sort of wacky and wonderful and weird programmers who sort of gathered around this programming language. And I was starting to learn programming myself at the time. And every time I didn't understand the concept in my Ruby programming book, I would start to doodle these little characters, this little girl called Ruby, and then she was joined by some of the era's tech sort of personalities. There was the Snow Leopard, which used to be Mac OS. There was Firefox, there was Androids, and a bunch of other characters. And for a long time, it was a side project. I worked in something quite different as a daytime job. But then, this was the time when Kickstarter was just starting to pick up steam. And I was living in New York at the time, and some of the Kickstarter folk told me that, Kickstarter folks told me that you should definitely run a project around this. And I did, and it became a huge success. At the time, it gathered almost $1,000 worth of pre-orders. I got a book deal in the States. And now a decade later, it's 4 books that combine these ideas of like, what are the big ideas of computer science? How can we tell stories that are more sort of diverse? And also, how can we use unplugged materials like build a paper computer or so forth to kind of illustrate the stories? And it became my career, which is kind of cool, that I actually make a living being a children's book author who writes stories about technology. And they were translated into, I think the latest count is 41 different languages. So like a lot of languages. I'll never be able to like travel to all the countries where the series has been published in.
That's cool. And what are some of the ways that the schools that you work with are playing with this or other technologies right now that you think other parents or other schools should know about?
Well, I'll give you a terrible example. First, I was a week ago, I was in a library here, and I'm not going to leave the library, but there was like a story lesson where the idea had been that kids will use AI to create stories and then also make illustrations to like work with those stories. And the stories were so terrible. They were like Harry Potter with dragons or like vampire novel, and the pictures were boring. And that's when I realized that, like we need pedagogy. We need like human educators to be there and guide these processes and help the kids sort of like develop and build the taste to be able to prompt these things and find more curious and interesting and fractally weird ways of using them. And it makes me really think that the interesting stuff that will happen in AI is also like, how do we develop taste? How do we, like, I follow a lot of Discord channels where people say that, like, make this image, but in the style of Ghibli, or make this image, but in the style of David Hockney. But in order to do that, you need to know David Hockney and Ghibli, and you need to know Wes Anderson, and you need to read a lot of authors in order to be able to sort of find the voice. And that makes me really hopeful. I think as we are kind of learning to use these languages, we are learning also ways of using them in the classroom in more interesting ways. And it's like a moment, in the same way as calculators or Photoshop didn't like make math education or arts education obsolete, rather they enhanced it. We are finding ways of using this new like text and image generation possibility. But for that to really happen in schools, we need educators to embrace and like have the pedagogy and have the skill to guide the students.
Nice. What's next for you in playgrounds? I know you're thinking of some others or maybe working on some things. If we can talk about that, I don't know. Yeah,
so no like city names yet, but I'm speaking with a bunch of cities around the world. So I definitely want to keep doing playgrounds. I think there's so much that I still like would want to learn more of. I want to do like a playground around semiconductors and synthetic biology and AI and quantum computing, and just help like kids understand these complex ideas of science, especially computer science, in a hands-on manner in a public space. And maybe my big like dream would be that in, I don't know, 10 years time, 15 years time, like we would have 20 or 30 of these, and people could actually like go from one place to another, and maybe they would be connected to one another through some sort of a protocol, a playground protocol or something. We'll see. But it feels like a meaningful and big project in the same way as writing books feels like.
Yeah.
And you know, like in 10 years time, the kids who first started to read Ruby will have kids of their own, and the cycle starts again. So that's the other beautiful thing about being a children's book author, is like there's always new kids.
Are there particular playground, I don't know, apparatuses or things that you wanted to bring to reality that didn't work in Helsinki for this first one, but do you have in mind for future ones? I'm curious if you can share any of those.
Yeah. So software engineers love this one architect called Christopher Alexander. And Alexander was famous for like creating these patterns around architecture that would allow like normal people to discuss everyday like architectural choices around them. So a pattern could be like make a space for grown-ups only, or a pattern could be like make a city block that has trees on two sides of the street. And then by like putting these patterns together, you could build like a functioning city, a functioning neighborhood, and a functioning home in the end. And I have this like dream of making Christopher Alexander's like playbook or patterns of play for computer science themed things. One of the things that I really wanted to do was updates. So like this is a generation of kids who grows up with Fortnite and like places where like the island, the Fortnite island, like changes every 3 months. There's like something new coming up, and the idea that a playground would be there for 20 years is like foreign to them. And I told the Helsinki folk that like, should we already plan in the beginning that like one day the playground is just going to feel different, like something magical is going to appear? And they said, no, we don't have the budget for that. So that's something I definitely want to do. I want to plan like a playground that from the get-go designs the idea that it changes. Then I want to do stuff around like perception, like how do we see things. I want to do like some crazy slides. I think that's always fun. Swings are always big. Like even teenagers use swings, not only the small kids. So something that would like take the idea of swinging in a new way. And yeah, I feel like I'm only getting started with understanding all of the potential and possibilities of a playground.
I love it. I can't wait to visit even more of these. Congrats on all of it. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's children's book author, educator, and playground designer Linda Liukas. More on her Hello Ruby books and the newly opened playground in Helsinki in the show notes. I hope this episode inspires you to go out and play, and I also hope you'll subscribe to Crafted and share the show with a friend. And for even more from the technologists crafting the future, sign up for the Crafted newsletter at crafted.fm.